You're holding a baby and a thought appears. What if you dropped them? You wouldn't, but it was there. And the moment you noticed it, a worse thought arrived. What kind of person thinks that? That second thought is where the real damage happens. Most of us never understand why either one showed up. The standard explanation goes something like this. Intrusive thoughts are misfires. Random static from a brain that generates far more mental content than consciousness ever needs. The thought about the baby, the violent image that surfaces while you're making coffee, the sudden urge to swerve into oncoming traffic. These aren't signals, they're noise. And the reason most people can shake them off is that a healthy brain has suppression machinery. The prefrontal cortex, working in concert with a loop of subcortical structures, flags the thought as irrelevant and moves on. In most people, this works well enough that the thought vanishes before it even fully forms. Where this system breaks down, the standard account continues, is in conditions like OCD. There, a specific circuit, running between the cortex and the striatum, fails to close the loop. The thought returns, the brain interprets the return as significance, and significance triggers compulsion. The neuroscience here is fairly well established. Hyperactivity in orbitofrontal and anterior cingulate regions, disrupted cortico-striato-thalamo-cortical signaling, a feedback loop that can't find its off switch. This framing, intrusive thoughts as glitches, pathology as a broken suppressor, is clean, intuitive, and in many ways useful. It has guided decades of treatment research. It has reduced stigma. If your brain misfires, you are not a bad person. You are a person with a noisy brain. But there's a measurement problem buried in this story. And once you see it, the clean version starts to look a little too clean. Furi, unwanted fMRI scanner interior. Clinical and slightly cold, with a single figure lying still inside. Here's the problem. When neuroscientists scan brains experiencing intrusive thoughts, they are almost never scanning brains at the moment of intrusion. They're scanning what happens afterward. The rumination, the attempted suppression, the return of the thought after the failed attempt to push it away. That's a different thing. The neuroimaging literature on intrusive thoughts is, by its own admission, largely a literature on perseverative cognition. The mental state of being stuck on a thought, not the state of having it arrive. A 2020 meta-analysis of neuroimaging studies in this area found consistent activation in the default mode network in the anterior cingulate cortex. But these signatures reflect sustained ruminative engagement, not the initial intrusion. The two are related, but they are not the same event. This matters enormously because the dominant model, intrusive thought as misfire, pathology as failed suppression, is built almost entirely on data from the second event, not the first. One interpretation of this is that we don't actually know what happens in the brain at the moment an intrusive thought appears, because we've been systematically measuring the wrong moment. The methodological trap is subtle but serious. Intrusive thoughts by definition arrive before you can set up a brain scanner for them. So researchers measure what they can, the aftermath, and then build theories about the origin. This is a version of what philosophers of science call the streetlight effect. You look where the light is, not necessarily where the answer is. There's a second problem layered underneath this. The glitch framing implicitly treats the brain as having a correct default state, one from which intrusive thoughts represent a deviation. But evolutionary accounts suggest something different. A brain that occasionally generates threat-relevant, transgressive, or socially dangerous scenarios may have been doing something useful. Rehearsing the unthinkable might be a feature, not a bug. Not because the thoughts are pleasant, but because a mind that can simulate extreme possibilities is a mind prepared for extreme circumstances. Neither of these observations cancels the standard model, but they do suggest it's incomplete. Let's look at what the evidence actually shows, with some precision about what it can and cannot tell us. A 2023 review in the field of behavioral neuroscience attempted to map the circuit and synaptic mechanisms underlying intrusive thinking across diagnostic categories: OCD, PTSD, depression, addiction. The finding worth sitting with is this: intrusive thoughts are transdiagnostic. They appear across conditions with very different suppression profiles, which complicates the idea that a single broken suppressor explains them. The circuits involved are overlapping but not identical. This suggests intrusive thinking may not be one thing neurologically, even if it feels like one thing experientially. On the suppression side, a 2022 brain imaging study used a motivated forgetting paradigm, deliberately asking participants to suppress specific memories, and found that the anterior cingulate cortex plays a clear role in signaling when suppression is needed. Critically, this is a control signal, not a generation signal. The anterior cingulate doesn't produce the intrusive content. It notices that the content is occurring and recruits inhibitory resources. So when this system is hyperactive, as it is in OCD, the brain isn't misfiring into intrusion, it's over-responding to intrusion that may be occurring at a relatively normal rate. This is a meaningful distinction. It suggests some OCD phenomenology may not be about more intrusive thoughts, but about a louder alarm response to thoughts that were always there. The cortico-striatal model itself, the one most textbooks lead with, is not without critics inside the field. A 2022 review in the psychiatry literature noted explicitly that neurocircuit models of OCD have significant limitations. Most are built from small samples. Many rely on paradigms that don't cleanly isolate obsessional content and the directionality of circuit dysfunction. Does the loop break and cause symptoms, or do symptoms alter the loop, remains genuinely unresolved. Meanwhile, research on thought suppression itself has added another wrinkle. A 2022 neuroimaging study found that connectivity between the superior frontal gyrus and the middle temporal gyrus mediates the relationship between neuroticism and how hard someone tries to suppress unwanted thoughts. In other words, personality traits predict suppression behavior, which in turn predicts how often thoughts feel intrusive. This suggests the phenomenology of intrusion, the felt sense of being invaded by a thought, may be partly downstream of suppression effort, not simply upstream of it. And then there's the question of extinction, the process by which unwanted associations lose their grip. Animal models, particularly work in fear extinction research from 2019, have clarified that fear extinction is not erasure. The original association is not deleted. What changes is which memory wins the retrieval competition. Applied to intrusive thoughts, the goal of treatment may not be silence, but context. Teaching the brain that this thought, in this moment, does not predict danger. That reframe has clinical implications, but it also has a philosophical one. If you can't erase the thought, only outcompete it, then the question is never, why does my brain think this? The question is, what is my brain currently treating as more real than everything else? So what does this mean for you, specifically? Most people who experience intrusive thoughts, and surveys consistently suggest that as most people, have been handed a model that says, the thought arrived, the thought is noise, ignore it and move on. That model is partially right, but it skips something. The evidence suggests that the experience of being invaded by a thought is often more about the response to the thought than the thought itself. The anterior cingulate fires an alarm. The alarm feels like meaning, and meaning invites attention. And attention, this is the part that matters, tends to amplify exactly what you're attending to. This is not a character failing. It's a loop. And understanding it as a loop changes what you do with it. If the thought is not a signal about who you are, if it's closer to a neural draft that never got approved for publication, then the act of interrogating it for self-relevant meaning is precisely what transforms noise into something louder. The thought didn't arrive because it's true. It arrived because your brain runs simulations, and some of those simulations are dark. You don't have to solve the thought. You may just have to stop treating it like a document about yourself. Three is where I land, reluctantly, and with some uncertainty. The misfire model is not wrong. It captures something real about how OCD works, and why exposure-based treatments help, but it may have flattened a more complicated picture. The research suggests intrusive thoughts are transdiagnostic, that measurement has mostly caught the aftermath rather than the origin, and that the brain's response to the thought may matter more than the thought itself. What I can't resolve, and neither can the current literature, is whether intrusive content is truly random, or whether it clusters around what the brain has learned to treat as threat adjacent, whether the thoughts are noise, or whether they're a map of something. I don't think we know yet, and I'm wary of anyone who says we do. The research behind this video draws from archives of disease in childhood, neuroscience, and biobehavioral reviews. Revista Brasileira de Psiquiatria, São Paulo, Brazil. 1999. Psychiatry Research. Neuroimaging. Frontiers in Behavioral Neuroscience. The Journal of Neuroscience. The official journal of the Society for Neuroscience. Brain Imaging and Behavior. Every claim traces to a published source. Full citations are in the description below. If the way this channel thinks about neuroscience resonates with you, subscribing helps this work reach people who'd appreciate it. New videos on the science of mind every